Now, let us have a look at who are the owners of water. Yes, let us see who have the ownership and who should have the ownership on water.
Groundwater has become the main source of water in the past few decades, especially for domestic and agricultural use. This high increase in the use of groundwater has resulted in tremendous impact on the availability of water and on the access to water.
Students, there are generally laws about groundwater in the states, but these laws have become outdated as well as inappropriate. The reason is simple, because these laws were framed when groundwater was a marginal source of water. These laws do not seem to hold good in the current context.
The shallow and deep tube wells are now drawing a lot of water for use, especially for agricultural purposes.
So students, in such a kind of scenario, what do you think should be the wise of using water? Students, as the groundwater is drawn from the land above, a link has been built between the land ownership and control.
In other words, the water that is drawn from the underground was expected to be owned by the landowner. This in turn makes it clear that the people who owned mostly controlled the groundwater. Also, there were no restrictions on the amount of water that the landlords could draw.
Students, this clearly points out the flaw in the existing system. The flaw is that the underground water does not obey the rules of human land ownership.
In other words, the boundaries that are made on the surface of the earth cannot rule the boundaries of underground water. Water is a flowing resource. The amount of water drawn from a tube well or well is based on the formation of the underground rock, the recharge that happens with every rainfall, or the surface water which happens over a very large area.
So, the actions of other people with regard to groundwater affect the levels of groundwater in the region.
For example, if water is drawn overly from one tube well, it affects the water in the neighboring tube wells. As more and more water is drawn, all of them tend to dry up. This is caused by the interconnection of the wells by the underground structures in the region.
So, it is very clear that ownership for a flowing source like water is not appropriate. Just like how we cannot draw boundaries to the air that flows from one field to another, one cannot draw boundaries for the water flowing underground.
With the groundwater being the major source of water for people, too much drawing of it affects the levels in all the regions. As a result, the future generations may also get affected.
This is the reason why one cannot allow individual landowners to draw as much water as they want. Therefore, there should be some kind of restrictions. Students, the restrictions will be acceptable only when the connection between ownership of land and water drawn from underground through tube wells is delinked. As we have seen, when there is no restriction, there would be no pressures of individual landowners to use water in a just way. Or there is no way to implement plans which take into consideration the welfare of a broader community and the environment. But what is existing is a system that is not regulated, a system where there is no authority to make a note of the wells, hand pumps and other tube wells in a given area.
All these make it imperative for a system that regulates the broader aspects of groundwater. This is the reason why water should be considered as a collective pool resource which is for all the people. In other words, just like roads, rivers and parks, water should also be considered as a public property which belongs to all the people.
Although this idea is being accepted by some state governments, it is yet to become a reality and spread its scope. Students, what we should also understand is that regulations is not an easy task. This is mainly because consumption of resources like water, natural gas, electricity, oil, etc. by one person affect the availability of these resources for others.
For example, many states have failed to address the issue of falling water tables. As a result, the state governments have taken to increasing subsidies for power so that the groundwater from deeper layers can be extracted.
Students, what do we understand from this?
Instead of facilitating just use of water, we are paving the way for more water to be drawn from the underground.
This is the reason there is a serious need to change the political thinking. And this will result in bringing an end to the negative competition to finish up the common pool resource, as there are many people wanting their share. And this is one of the biggest challenges. This is why there is a need for laws and regulation that believe in the concept of water as a common flowing resource.
Moreover, drinking water should be the first priority besides being a human right. Also, the Panchayat Raj institutions must have sufficient control over the utilization of groundwater by the people.
With regard to the Panchayat Raj institution having control over the use of groundwater, let us look at an example of the dispute of water between the Perumatti Grama Panchayat in Kerala and the Coca-Cola company, which has an establishment there. The issue went to the courts and the case has been pending in the Supreme Court as on January 2014. The opposing judgments given by the judges in Kerala with regard to regulation of groundwater resulted in proceeding to the Supreme Court. The first judge pointed out that groundwater is a public resource to be used by all, besides highlighting the state's duty to protect it against excess exploitation. He also made the link that drinking water is a priority. On the other hand, the second judge gave importance to the issue of landowners' control of groundwater. The judgments from this example highlight the missing clarity over the laws. Students, from all of this, we can understand the significance of water, the origins of various river systems, and the grave need for saving the most important resource called water. So this is about Indian rivers and water resources available in India. I hope you enjoyed this lesson.